Hello, America, and welcome to another episode of the Ultra MK podcast, where together we are reversing the narrative. And on today's show, we have a revisiting guest, a friend of mine, a gentleman running for the state of California gubernatorial race as a candidate. He has been known as the tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist for a very long time, which is why I'm very honored to call him my friend. But today we have joining with us Louis Herms for California governor.
That is our obligation, to inform and alert the American people, to make certain that they possess all the facts that they need and understand them as well, the perils, the prospects, the purposes of our program, and the choices that we face.
How you doing, Louis?
Fantastic.
Well, thanks for coming back onto the show. It's been a while since we've been able to catch up with you. I think, in fact, the last time you were on the show, you had just decided to run the governor campaign here in California. So it's great to kind of maybe reflect on that journey that you've been on. And I'd just like to congratulate you for all the hard work. I know we don't have results yet because that's happening next week, but I've been watching you and many of the other candidates and all the work that you're putting in, boots on the ground, traveling from the top of California all the way to the very bottom. We have 58 counties here in California, for those who don't know, and I believe you've been to just about every one, if not every one of those. So,
Oh yeah.
great work, Lewis. How has that journey been for you?
It's been incredible actually, and the people we meet along the way is probably the best part. And it's an extraordinary amount of work if you're really going to campaign seriously, right? So we could either campaign like basement Biden, or we can actually campaign and boots on the ground and meet as many people as we can and travel all over the place. And that's we chose option two, probably because I don't have a basement, but um, but it's been fantastic, and we made a conscious effort to go to not just all 58 counties, but all 58 register voters, county election clerks, and attempt to interview them. And we interviewed, I think, over 30, maybe 35 of the 58 actually showed up for the interview. So it was interesting to say the least.
Now, tell me about that strategy because I mean, as just a normal political campaign, candidates will, pick strategic places on the map where they want to try to visit and be able to find speaking engagement opportunities. But what was it about your campaign strategy that really made it important for you to implement? Can you tell us about that strategy? Are you comfortable with sharing that?
Sure, sure. Well, the going to every election ROV was not a campaign strategy. It was just happened to be something I would have done with my other organizations, Freedom and Action and Screw Big Gov, because it was the right thing to do. And then I said, okay, so if while we're doing that, if we can visit and meet with people in every single county, then that could actually be beneficial because I've always said we have to be boots on the ground as much as possible, and there's no stone that we have to leave unturned. So it worked symbiotically but separately. In fact, when I walked into the election offices, I did not walk in as a candidate. In fact, I intentionally did the opposite. I just walked in with, "We are with clearelection.net. Let's talk about your election processes and your transparency."
So basically, like as an independent consultant or an independent, or just a citizen, I should
That's
say,
it.
just a concerned citizen.
Just somebody of the people. That's all it was.
That's great. That's great. I mean, today's show too, I do want to kind of emphasize just elections in general. I know that, recently you put out a great video on X, with a deep dive that you did with Grok on 2020 election results. So I would like to talk about that here in a second. But before that, I mean, with an election happening here in just days to come in California, um, we have the jungle primary race. For those who don't know, that's a very interesting style of political campaign. Can you talk to us about what's happening in California and just elaborate a little bit for a second on what the jungle primary is and why it seems, I think actually I heard recently that Democrats are trying to change the rules yet again to try to get, instead of, two Democrats or two Republicans, that they want it to be one Republican, one Democrat. I don't know if you heard anything about that, but you want to just kind of explain that, talk about that for a second?
Right. So it's all well. Let's talk about the fact that everything you're watching is a psyop, and it has been for the long time. And I'm going to shock people when I say this, but the Democrats and Republicans are strategically in cahoots with each other. There's not, it is absolutely 100% a uniparty. And then you do, the outlier is not the Rhino Republican, the Republican in name only. The outlier is when you actually get a true patriot under the flag of Republican that gets into office. That's the outlier. What we've been convinced it's exactly the opposite. Everything we're watching is a lie. Everything is a game. Everything is a psyop. It's all fifth generational warfare. Now, I do believe there's a good side of that also. So it's not just from the negative side. So when the Democrats say they want just a Democrat and a Republican through, so what are they really saying? They're saying they want to ace out 30% of the population because the non-Democrats and the non-Republicans are 30% of the vote. The 30% is who they're most afraid of. They're not afraid of the Republicans because they already have just about twice as many Democrats, according to the numbers, if you believe the numbers, than the Republicans. So, of course, they would say that because that would guarantee them a win in perpetuity, right? So, this is the game. And they've been very successful at icing out that 30%. I'm going to give you some examples. There's been so many debates. I don't know how many debates they were that were mainstream media debates, uh, and not one of them, not one, put an independent on stage. Now, if that's a 30% of the voting block, why wouldn't one of them been up there? It's very odd, right? They're in cahoots. We have information that we believe, how about I say, we believe that Eric Swalwell's campaign helped try to push Bianco up. We have information now that Hilton is getting funded also by the Democrats. So if that's the truth, that should give everybody a real indication of what's really going on. So they will trade, the deep state will trade a D for an R when the D's are absolutely unpalatable to we the people. And they clearly are in California right now. I can tell you that. We've gone traveled all around, and the number one thing we hear, which is funny, I didn't even expect this, is we can't wait till Newsom's out of there. So we say, are you a Republican? No, I'm a Democrat. Oh, got it. That's the number one conversation we're having when we're driving the bus around or stepping off the bus. So if I see it, the Democratic Party knows it. So they know there's no path forward for a Democrat right now. So how do they do that? Now they're going to have to support the Rhino Republican that they think they can control because it's all one apparatus. And that's the game that's being played. It's sad. It's how we've got aced out of virtually everything. And if you want to talk about suppression, we have the evidence that will blow people away. But the good news is we are seeing a sea change in the political makeup where people are starting to say, I only care about the policies. Let me look at the policies. Let me look at what the fruits of your labor are at. And that's what we've been pushing for several years. I don't hate on Republicans and I don't even hate on Democrats. I'm not interested in that. I just want the best person in office to do the job only for we the people.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, like, I guess with your finger on the pulse of the people during the campaign stops, and you were to ask them that question, about how they don't want Newsom in office anymore, and then come to find out they're a Democrat. Is the census, like, from your standpoint, that because they would never vote for the other side, meaning a Republican candidate, that they're more likely to vote non or candidate or independent? Is that really what you
100%.
think? That's what's going
Yeah,
to possibly happen, correct?
100%. I have a higher conservative value set than the two front running Republicans, for sure. It's documented. Yet I know when I speak to Democrats, they are open to voting for me and not voting for the other two guys. And it's not the value set, it's the trigger response of the psychology of them voting for a Republican is not palatable for them. Just like a Republican in many cases not palatable to vote for a Democrat. Now, that may seem bad, but that is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and it has zero to do with me because I think it's going to take a long time till we pass this. This is exactly where the founding fathers told us to be. You
Okay.
have John Adams, James Madison, and George Washington all indicated that the death of America would be a two-party system. And Thomas Jefferson said, if I had to choose a party in order to get into heaven, I'm not going to heaven. So that should be a great indication of where we're really supposed to be. Coming up on the 250th anniversary, July 4th, we need to reset our country back to the original founding fathers' vision of what we had. I don't hate on any party. It's just not the way we were supposed to be because
Correct.
you're creating an illusion of choice.
Hmm.
And the divide is intentional because when we get divided, the controllers can conquer. So let's
Hmm.
not be divided anymore. Let's have separate issues that we can have a conversation on, but let's come together and unify under one beautiful flag. And we can do it, but it's going to be a lot of work to get to that point.
Yeah, I definitely see examples of, like, other campaigns. For example, Spencer Pratt running for mayor in Los Angeles. And I think recently President Trump put out a truth or a statement somewhere saying that, hey, I think Spencer Pratt's a MAGA guy or something like that. And then Spencer's response to that was, I'm not a MAGA guy. I'm a Los Angelino. I am basically we the people guy of my city. And to me, I think that is a smart move on his behalf, knowing his constituency and wanting to appeal to all voters in Los Angeles, because, I mean, he's making campaign ads that are just blowing people away. And he's also making an obvious effort to reach out to women voters, like moms of Los Angeles, as well as people who love animals, because he loves animals, and we're finding out all the torture being done by the homeless population to dogs on Skid Row. So I thought that was pretty smart, because, I mean, President Trump, I think, has a an overall his ranking right now, I think, is at 37% approval rate with everything that he's been doing. So he's starting to drop. That could be connected to the Iran situation, to the America First people that got MAGA to where they're at, now, with the Epstein files just being called a hoax. So there's a lot of people feeling betrayed by the current administration. And so I think that's really smart, as smart of Spencer. I think it's really smart of you, because it's sincere. If you really care about people, you care about all people, even if they don't believe ideologically the way that you do, because the founders were right. The model can work. And the two-party system has been a mechanism to control people 100%. I couldn't agree with you anymore, Lewis.
Yeah. I mean, Machiavelli used it perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I've seen you throughout the campaign trail. I think that anything is possible, especially living through 2016 where, you can't believe polls anymore because the polls had Hillary Clinton to win in a landslide. And we obviously saw that that was a lie. And so you can't really believe any polls right now at this point. Anything is possible in this California governor race.
Yeah, and it's tough. I'm going to be authentically tell you, I don't know if I'll get 1,000 votes or 1,000,000 because the pollsters refuse to poll us. And that
Mhm.
is by design because when we call the media and say, why aren't we on the debate stage? They say, well, because you're not polling. We say, you're not polling us. You know what I mean?
Right.
It,
Yeah, you control the polling system, so that's not a fair,
it's
legitimate
not, and
measurement.
it's intentional. But the fact that I'm listed as number one most hated person from the Southern Poverty Law Center 3 years running in the state of California, I knew we were up against it, right? Because they embed these evil people with inside of all media. They embed them within all social media. So that's just what it works. And it's always ironic when I say I'm the most hateful person because I think I'm all about love, and I'm certainly not even close to being racist. So
Well, you're
but
a threat to the establishment. And
that's
so
all it
let's
is.
let's
That's
talk
all.
about let's talk about the Southern Poverty Law Center. Like, who are they? What is their purpose? Because I've researched them and I know big name celebrities like George Clooney and Oprah and Soros Jr., all these people have been donating money to Southern Poverty Law Center. They're kind of like an Act Blue entity, right? Where money could come in and then you don't know what they end up doing with it or what NGO they give it to. Can you talk a little bit about who the Southern Poverty Law Center
Sure.
is?
Well, the psyop is that they are there to help people of low income with lawfare cases, right? And if you look at what they spend their money on, a very, very small percentage, I mean a minute percentage is helping people, which is crazy. But I know that they have a 500 million bank account in the US, and speculation is they may have another billion overseas hiding somewhere. So they use that money in particular to suppress anybody that is going after the establishment or the globalists, right? So they're part of an organization very similar to Soros Foundation, but Soros Foundation's been very upfront. Poverty Law Center has always pretended to be this very, very helpful, benign organization, calling out oh, these people are so bad. Look at them. Oh, it's be afraid of them. You know what I mean? And they're probably the worst evil in my opinion, because where they put their funding and their operatives are very, very hurtful to our situation. I'll give you an example. So we had a forensic audit done of my X account on um, for my X account, and it showed that we had all these weird tags that were in it that would suppress us because we were considered, hateful or anti-Semite or racist or a liar. I mean, it was just crazy seeing it and trying to hurt people because we call out the medical mafia. So very dangerous to that industry. So I said to Grok, I said, you know what? Just try being completely honest. Let's not play any games. Evaluate this and tell me where I am. And we are 92% suppressed on Grok. This is according to Grok, not according to Lewis.
Wow.
That we are 90. Can you imagine that you build a platform up over several years and only 8% of your information even has a chance to get out of there, or on an 8% value rating? So it's highly suppressed. And sure enough, I I talked to them about this, Grok, about the Southern Poverty Law Center, so on and so forth, how they embed their operatives, and it's an agreement. It's like, yeah, this is how they operate.
Wow.
So even under Elon, I lost an account that had, I don't know, 60, 80,000 followers. I forgot how much. So this is so deep and so dark. One of the first things that Obama did when Obama left office is he organized and got 300 people into a building and took up over a whole floor to do internet propaganda. That's literally all they were supposed to do. So we're up against a major apparatus. The SPLC is extraordinarily dirty. What's going to happen, in my opinion, because the DOJ just indicted them, right? What they're going to do is they're just going to change their flag. So we're gonna go, oh, we win. We're all excited. Yay. SPLC's done, or they fixed everything. And literally they'll just move their operation under to another banner. That's what's gonna happen. But we need to be aware of this stuff because this is war. So we have to look for this.
Yeah, it just seems like that's been a tactic is kind of morphing into something else that we think, we can get a victory out of something, but then they morph into something else. And now that floor of once was people that Obama had appointed to do all of that sabotage, online sabotage and propaganda, probably been replaced with bots using AI. And
Absolutely.
now they're way more efficient and way more innovative. And that's really concerning me as an America First patriot, as a from a bigger picture of what we're seeing now in psychological operations with, let's say our guy got in the office, President Trump, and then the administration that's been built around him. It just seems like a lot of the players that we thought we'd see justice, based on what we learned from the COVID years, things like censorship with big tech. You see these big meetings now being held where you have Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel. You get all these big tech oligarch guys that are now coalescing around this administration. Isn't that a little bit concerning to you? And is that maybe a part of the optics that they want people to see because this is still some kind of an operation that we're watching?
So if I look from a non-operational standpoint, it's extraordinarily concerning. If I look from an operational standpoint, it appears to be a Trojan horse. So what President Trump will do is publicly, and this is complete conjecture, just so you know, on my part, publicly President Trump will align himself with this tech world that's taking us in a direction that does not look awesome. And in fact, it's a surveillance model, is what it is. And he aligns himself with the Zionist and Israel. But at the same time, we have to look at this, especially from the Israel standpoint. So he's aligning himself with the Zionists in Israel who have controlled the banking system, have controlled education, has controlled Hollywood, has controlled a big pharma, massive parts of government, right? But at the same time, if we really look at it, if he really does move us completely off of the Fed to the Treasury, right? If we really do disassociate ourselves from that fake education system, right? And if Bobby Kennedy really does do his whole job, and that will help take down the medical mafia. So what he's really doing is he's doing all the work in the background that we want on those things, but he cannot be called an anti-Semite at the same time because he's cozying up next to him. So I called that the Trump Trojan horse. That's my Pollyanna vision. That's what I hope that's going on, right? And the same with the tech oligarchs. But what I tell people, and I've told this for all this time, I said, let's not assume anything bad or anything's good going on. Let's just assume that we, the people, are the plan. And if we, the people, are the plan, we keep moving forward regardless. So if Trump turns out to be an amazing guy, that's fantastic. That works to our advantage. And if he turns out not to be, and we've been used or played, well, we're still moving forward because the more that we wake up, the more that we got this. And the reality is, whether people believe in Q or not, or they believe in President Trump or not, they both had one amazing effect. They were part of this awakening that we are involved in right now. And most of those that are awake will not revert back to where they were. So we, the people, are completely in control of this. And you know why? Because we're God's people. And God's already won this. We just need to do the work to reap the harvest.
Well said. how does the 2020 election play into this? I know that recently you were working with Grok to find out some statistical odds. Can you talk about that project with us?
Yeah, for sure. So, the challenge I have with I call them the AI search bots, right? Because there's different AIs. You have creative AI, then you have search AI, and then you have AI that can help you engineer things, so on and so forth. So there's many types of AIs. We kind of lump them all together, right? So in regards to Grok, I considered a search bot, and 18 months ago, I was telling everybody we need to stay away from this AI stuff. It is dangerous. It could possibly take things over in a really bad way. And then I said, wait a second. If there's a bunch of if there's a bunch of troops marching on my city, I'm going to fight. I'm not going to just let them march over, right? And if they have tanks, I'm going to have tanks. So then I thought about that. I go, well, that's not a good thing. So then I started telling everybody, oh, it's probably almost 2 years now. I told people, I said, we need to absolutely get involved in AI, but we need to be the benevolent force involved to make sure that we drive this in the right direction, or at minimum, we can have our AI combat the bad AI. So I started using it for that purpose, and I started using it as a search bot, which it's intended. What I've noticed over the last year and a half, which is very, very concerning, is I could ask a question about a year and a half ago and get a proper, honest answer. Now I get an answer that's completely swaying in the direction of this globalist cabal, which is very, very scary because they're getting people used to this. And if it's, hey, let's see what Grok said. Let's see what ChatGPT said. If they say it, it's true, and it's not. It's not, because the way it works is all they're doing is they're just a scrubbing engine. So they scrub websites, and bad input equals bad output. So if they're scrubbing these websites with all of this crazy input because the people with money are flooding the web with their false information across the web, and they're considered authorized sites. So that's all Grok's doing. So I even said this when I'm in a conversation with I just call it ones and zeros. Um, so when I'm in a conversation with Grok, I said, hey, my bot friend, here's the deal. You're just scrubbing off of websites that are already there that you're authorized. Is it possible that you're just getting the information from organizations, maybe putting out false information, so therefore you turn it to be as true? And it took a while to answer that one. Is it, well, yeah, you might have a point there. I said, okay. So you absolutely believe that there was not election fraud and the elections were not stolen. Yes, maybe a little bit it said the elections definitely weren't stolen. Biden 100% won the election. I go, okay. I said, Grok, let's play a game. Oh, I love games, Grok says, right? Can't wait to play that. I said, let's play a game of math and discernment. So what I did is I took a couple markers that mathematically to me were very unlikely that would have happened, right? It's unlikely, for example, that Biden would have gotten 11 million more votes than Obama. Obama is extraordinarily popular. He was a campaigner. He didn't campaign in his basement. Whether we like him or not, he was a great speaker. Biden was the opposite from all of that stuff. Very, very unpopular, right? Unpopular within the Democrat Party and certainly unpopular everywhere else. So I said, what are the odds that, for example, that Biden, with all his unpopularity, could have outpaced Obama by 11 million votes? And it was like something like 1 in 120. And then I used another marker. Okay, according to President Trump having a 97-mile caravan in Arizona, being extraordinarily popular in Arizona, that they were pro gun rights. They're a red state, and Biden didn't even campaign there, and Trump campaigned there several times. What are the odds that Biden would have won Arizona? And it came out extraordinary odds. And then I kept going on. Anyways, the end result, it was over 1 trillion to 1 chance that Biden, and then Grok says, wow, we should look at things from this angle more often. I completely agree with you. So Grok was agreeing with me that there's no way in hell that Biden would have won the election. And this was zero manipulation. I literally was just stating facts. Here's a fact,
Yeah.
here's a fact, here's a fact. You decide. And when I took that angle, I actually convinced Grok that this would be something for him to go back, to go back in the program to the programmers and say, we need to implement mathematical probabilities into our equations when we're trying to say something did happen or didn't happen, right?
Mhm.
So who knows if the message got back to him, but that just gives you a summary, but it was amazing what that revealed.
Well, that's a very unique experiment because it makes sense. All they do is take data points from all over the internet, from hundreds of different sources, and then they kind of condense it down. But like you were saying, if all the sources, or if 80, 90% of the sources are propaganda machines, they're only sourcing from propaganda. So your strategy was brilliant. You basically took, like, let's say you focused on swing state locations and what happened in each of the swing states, and you pointed out facts of what actually happened. It got the Grok to kind of reanalyze everything and then admit that probability based on statistical data is 1 in a trillion, right?
Right. Yeah, I think it was 1 in 55 trillion to be exact. So,
Wow.
and the reason why I did this is I always try to think from the perspective of the people, the non-believers, right? And I understand where they're coming from. Even these are Republicans that don't believe there was election fraud, right? Because they keep hearing, well, this court case still, if this didn't go through or this didn't go through, how could it possibly be happening, right? And I get it. So then I said, okay, I just want people to be awakened to the fact that it's possible. So we have to change their paradigm. In my first film ever, it was about changing their paradigm. So how can we change their paradigm? Let's prove that it's statistically impossible for Biden to have won. If we can get people just to absorb that, now they're going to go, okay, what really happened? But we're jumping to what really happened before we're changing their belief system. And I think that's where we made the mistake.
Mm. Do you think that you would get that you would get similar results using a different AI, like if you were to use Chat GPT?
I do, and I challenge anybody to go watch my video. Just take out you have to take out the exact phraseology I use to be fair, because we want it to be fair, and then use it in ChatGPT, Gemini, and all of that stuff, or Claude. I was going to do it myself, but I really just don't have the time right now. I may do it. I have a presentation in June at an event. I may do it before then to present it.
Because this, to me, it just seems like, although you've methodically created a really good experiment with using Grok to prove this case, but even the people are still divided, right? So it seems like more left-leaning people will use ChatGPT, and more right-leaning
True.
people will use Grok because Grok is basically Elon's platform, X, and so on and so forth. So there's still people don't believe different AIs right now. It seems
I
like. So
agree.
I'd be curious to see how that experiment would happen.
Yeah, I agree, and that's my intention. So we'll see what happens.
So let's talk about like with what's happening as a nation right now. What's your take right now on this Iran situation, the Strait of Hormuz, the effects, long-term and short-term effects of having a major shipping channel closed down for months and months when the world needs the commodities that could come through the Strait of Hormuz, like things like fuel, obviously, petrol, fertilizer, steel, certain things that the world is just not getting. What kind of repercussions could we be facing?
Yeah, I wonder if this could have been planned a long time ago. And the reason why I'm suggesting that is because there's only one state, to my knowledge, that actually gets oil from the Strait of Hormuz, and that's California. The
Hmm.
other 49 states don't deal with Iran or that situation over there, I should say, which is fascinating. I'm not sure how it's going to affect us. I think this may be a complete diversion from what people think it is. I really believe something else is going on there, and that's why the talking points are so strong in either direction. And I've learned a long time ago, if you have the left all the way over here in one direction and the right over here in the direction, there's something else that's probably going on. Um, I'll give you a great example. If you remember AB 495 in here in California, right? You had the left saying this is going to help illegals, although they wouldn't call them illegals. So this is going to help and undocumented, and the right was saying this is all about child trafficking, right? And when we are so strong, opinionated like that, to me it feels like there's probably a psyop because that is the illusion of choice. That's the division. That's they're hiding something else in this gray area here. So I dug into it. And sure enough, I found out that there's a health clause in there. So ultimately, what I think it is I don't think it's about people going in and stealing children and taking them from the parents and they're gone forever. I think this was more about forced vaccination. So the nurses can go and take your child out, vaccinate your child, and then put your child back in, is what I think it was. So I liken that to the same thing that's kind of going on in Iran right now. I'm guessing that this is what I'm hoping is if Trump is the good guy that I still think he is, I think the goal here is to denuclearize the world. And the way that process would work, of the way I've laid it out, and I've kind of murder board this, how this would happen is you would have to denuke North Korea, which has happened, right? You would have to denuke Iran. Why? Because those are considered two rogue regimes. There's no way that you can convince any other nation to denuke unless you got rid of those two. Now, if we have successfully denuked Iran, then you start talking to the Middle East. And I believe India has already said they'd be willing to do this, but obviously then the India and the Pakistan have to make sure they're denuked. So if you can get the Middle East and India to denuke, right? Now you can use that leverage for China and Russia. And Russia said they'd be open to it years ago. So I don't know if they still are, right? I think this may be something bigger at play. What if those strategic strikes, and they're not killing a bunch of people and there's not a bunch of Americans dying, what if those strategic strikes have to do with denuking the whole world? Because if you think about it, we don't even need nukes anymore. We have such pinpoint accurate weapons now that using nukes would just be absolutely ridiculous. And everybody would come after you if you did it anyways. So
Well,
that
I was going to ask you too, because it's like nukes are kind of the old mass destruction type of
exactly,
weaponry, but I don't know if you ever heard of the rods of God
absolutely.
type of technology where these massive, 80 to 100 foot tungsten rods are dropped from satellite
Yep.
at precision targets and have just the same amount of destruction without nuclear fallout. So it's like, are they trading? Are they? I don't know. I'm just speculating. Are they
No,
trading
I
the
I would
old weaponry for the new weaponry?
I would completely agree. And they also have direct energy weapons now that are extraordinarily effective.
Hmm.
So what you're doing, if you denuke the world, it makes people feel a lot safer. At minimum, they know that you're not going to have this nuclear waste issues and so on and so forth. And if there was ever a nuke to go off, you just the way it damages, look at Chernobyl. You still can't go into Chernobyl and do much work over there because of the radiation effects, although they said it's going away. So if that's the goal here, that's a pretty fantastic outcome if that's the way it goes. But I think there's a bigger play here. Trump publicly has called for Iranian people to step up. If anybody understands the Persians and they look back in pre-Shah, right? The Shah of Iran, pre the Shah of Iran, that was a very open country, and they were very, the women would dress nice. They didn't have the headdresses, right? They were out sunbathing, having a good time, and everything like this.
It looked very westernized,
It was
actually.
it was
Yeah.
extraordinarily westernized. In fact, they I I was not I wasn't deeply involved, but my father was because he was from a different religion than I. He's a Baha'i, and the Baha'is were persecuted. So we would constantly meet Persians that were coming over to the United States when I was younger, and some of the most wonderful people you would ever meet, right? And they were telling us how things were transitioning. So if the students can rise up and Iranians in general can rise up and take their country back, they will revert back to what they remembered, right? And this what their history shows them. So that would be a huge win also. So my children get mad at me because they're like, oh, look at he's starting wars and so on and so forth. I just think there may be something a lot deeper here, a lot deeper, but remains to be seen. And I know there's some conspiratorial things too of what could be happening in Iran, and maybe it's that also.
Yeah, I mean, it falls back to the Zionists of Israel. And I mean, even the divide amongst the MAGA and America First people. I'm seeing these influencers online that are really just kind of making Trump out to be a puppet of Netanyahu, Miriam Adelson, Jared Kushner, and him basically allowing them to create these wars still and to provoke war within the Middle East. So
Yep.
it's really interesting to see what could be happening here. I'm on the fence like you. My loyalty does fall closer towards President Trump, and I am a believer of the Q plan because we've seen so many deltas and so many things have happened to prove that there could be some looking glass technology that the good guys might have access to with seeing probability and maybe looking into future timelines. And that's
Okay,
kind
let
of
me touch on those two things before we continue really quick, because this is
sure.
very, very important. Um, if I'm right about the denuking thing, the only way that you're going to get Israel to denuke is if the Middle East is willing to do it. That's the only way. Also, when President Trump did what he did on these strategic strikes in Iran, remember Israel was on the verge of going boots on the ground, full blast into Iran. Now, I don't think they would have been very successful, to be honest with you, because Iran has a very, very interesting setup in regards to their topography and their troops themselves. But they wanted to go full on. The fact that the Middle East is supporting President Trump here is fascinating. So I think there's the bigger picture at play for sure. I forgot what the other comment you made, but it was also pretty interesting.
Well, just about like white hats, Q posts, deltas, having the ability through Operation Looking Glass, or
Oh,
Project
yes.
or Project Looking Glass, especially with the release of the recent Bob Lazar documentary called S4, and that kind of a slow reveal of the things that our military and government's been involved in, way beyond, spacecraft, extraterrestrials, even time travel or looking into timelines.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, I've dug deeply into Project Looking Glass a long time ago, and ironically, somebody told me on a phone call, very prominent person about 5 years ago, said, Lewis, they didn't, this person did not call it Project Looking Glass, but what he did say is he says, we currently have the capability to run millions of scenarios all at one time, right, to determine what the potential outcome is. He goes, and he was saying we, and I'm assuming he was talking about the White Hats, are making our decisions based on that. At first, it really frustrated me because I said, and this was years ago, I said, how dare we put our livelihood in the hands of a computer? And he says, no, there's a special discernment aspect that goes along with this, where humans are involved in the discernments, but it's running these scenarios so quickly on likely outcomes. He said it would absolutely blow you away. This was several years ago that he told me this. And then I ended up stumbling on the Project Looking Glass, and I said, wait, is this the same thing? Maybe it's the exact same thing. And Project Looking Glass was you sent me a video that said it was in the 70s. I think it may have even been started in the 60s, but maybe they started to perfect it through the 70s. It is incredible technology. But let's be clear about Project Looking Glass. You know this, but not everybody knows this. Things get kind of manipulated through our conspiracy world because we look through the lens of what's the most sensational outcome, and we also play the game of operator often, right? So one person says something and it gets, so Project Looking Glass is not peeking in and opening up a portal to the future, right, and seeing things happening. It is an amalgamation of scenarios based on multiple calculations, is what I think it is. And then it gives a picture of an outcome that may be. And I believe that they've been working with AI for for at least 50 years, way before it's come to the public view. And the reason why I really know that to be true is I was studying about 30 years ago weaponry of the United States military, and somebody came across me and he says, "Oh yeah, we've had that for 30 years." Right? And it
Wow.
just came out. You know, it was the technology that they were using. I think they were using it in the F-15 at the time. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, so I think it's for people who are maybe not privy or have never heard of Operation Looking Glass or what this subject matter is that we're talking about. I think the best way to maybe describe it would be like an AI that's way far advanced, supercomputer advanced, and has been able to give probabilities and certain outcomes that can then show a picture, kind of like how you would tell like one of your creative AI apps to say, "Hey, show me a picture of Matt Kennedy and Lewis Herms hanging out at the beach, together, sipping on Mai Tais." Like, and then it'll put that image together
Yep.
based on facial recognition. But is that kind of what you predict the Looking Glass technology is like
Yeah.
probability?
Yeah,
Okay.
very similar. It's just the, and in fact, I asked the gentleman and I said, so you're talking about a quantum type computer? He goes, oh, much better. I
Wow.
said, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
That
fascinating.
that
But
is.
he likened it more to the human brain.
Hmm. Do you think that the technology was brought from another place? Like, I mean, some have said that maybe the ancient Sumerians had this technology of some type, or it has been brought by some beings from space, maybe relating it to the Roswell crash. What do you think it could have come from? I mean, we're
So
just we're, we're just theorizing here.
right. And when we just talk about aliens and so on and so forth, I'm more feet on the ground in regards to this, and I have an interesting question for anybody that believes in the aliens as the ones that are presented to us, like the reptilian lookings and the grays and so on and so forth. So my question is this: if we have aliens coming here from completely different universes, from way far away, galaxies way far away, as they say. If that's what's happening here, why are all of the illustrations of the aliens that we think are true are all bipedal just like we are? Why do they have two arms and two legs? That doesn't make sense to me. That does not add up to me in the least. Now the orbs make more sense to me, right? But so I would say it almost sounds like they call extraterrestrial, right? Extra terra. Maybe they come from someplace else within this planet or outside someplace we can see, or maybe I'll give you and this is just I'm just throwing out these maybes because I think it's fascinating. I just don't believe automatically that everything out in the universe would have two arms and two legs. It doesn't common sense. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, yeah, like to me, like I go to the bar scene in Star Wars, and you see all these different types of aliens, you know?
Exactly. That would make more sense to me.
Yeah.
So then I think about, I go, well, what if there's time travel? Okay, let's look at that. What would a tall gray would be equivalent to us evolving over time? Because We're going to use our brains more. We're going to have more cones in our eyes so we can see in different dimensions. We're going to be more efficient, so we're not going to be have to suck too much oxygen through our nose and our mouth, so it would be smaller. And we definitely aren't going to have to eat the same way we eat, right? And we will not need the muscle tone because our brains can do stuff and we can avoid danger. That would be us evolved, right? So could that be us in the future making sure we're not creating nuclear holocaust over the world? These are the type of things that I run through my head of different
Hmm.
scenarios, just because
Hmm.
it just doesn't seem likely to me that aliens from far galaxies away would be bipedal in
Yeah.
nature. Not all of them.
Well, it just kind of, yeah, for me, it's like once you feel like you're awakening and you start finding out lies have been fed to us ever since, we were born to our parents, our grandparents, you start questioning everything and you have to use the brain God's given us in order to try to analyze the probability and be open to what else could be going on. And so,
Yep. Yep.
you're definitely you're not the traditional politician, Lewis, and I think that's why you're such a great candidate for California, sir. And I'm just really happy I got a chance to meet you along your journey, and I'm really proud to say that you're a friend of mine. And I'm really just thankful that you're out there fighting the good fight for we the people. And
As well as you. You're doing the same thing, and it's trust me, I recognize and it's much appreciated.
thank you, Lewis. I can't wait to see you, and I'll be praying for you and praying for these election results because anything is possible. God can make anything happen. At the end of the day, it's not man trying to manipulate. Those days are over, and now it's God's time. And He can do anything He wants. So I'll be praying for a great outcome for you in this upcoming election next week.
Yep. God bless you, Matt.
God bless you too, Lewis. I'll catch you next time. And folks, if you've enjoyed this episode of the Ultra MK podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, if you want to check out more information about Lewis Herms, you can visit both of his websites. I'd encourage you to. One is screwbiggov.com. And if you also want to check out his campaign website and support him in these final days before the election, feel free to check out his website, hermsforcali.com. Share this website with like-minded friends and family, people who are also awakening to the truth of the Uni-party and the manufactured two-party system here in California and the rest of the nation. And Lewis, it would be a great candidate that would represent you and your values, no matter where you fall on the quote unquote political spectrum, because he is a we the people guy. I sincerely vouch for him when I say that. And please like and subscribe all of his content. And we will catch you on another episode of the Ultra MK podcast, where together we are reversing the narrative. God bless you.